Welcome to the SBI Podcast, offering CEOs, sales and marketing leaders ideas to make the number.
Welcome to the SBI Podcast, a weekly broadcast dedicated to helping you make your number by getting your peers to share with you how they are making theirs. Today we're going to demonstrate how to learn who your buyers are, how they make purchase decisions, and why they choose you over your competitors. So why this topic? Buyers have changed their preferences and continue to do so. They want to engage with your company in new ways and through new channels. Brand preference erodes very quickly these days, and loyalty is harder and harder to obtain and retain. Revenue growth depends on your ability to know your buyers better than your competitors, and maybe even better than themselves. My name is Greg Alexander, and I'm the CEO of SBI, and I'm your host today. And helping me with this topic today in our demonstration is a marketing leader who has expertise in this area. Her name is Ann Fellman. Ann, welcome to the show, and please introduce yourself to the audience.
Hi, Greg. Thank you so much. So my role, I'm the Senior Vice President of Marketing at Code 42. We're a company we are a modern endpoint backup. And so what we do is back up and protect all end-user data for more than 39,000 companies worldwide. And so what we do is our cloud solutions enable IT and your security teams to centrally view, protect, and manage all of that end-user data and look at that as a critical asset. Essentially, what it comes down to at the end of the day is helping organizations rapidly recover from any data loss event, whether it be theft, a breach, or just simply, things go wrong and you lose data. So we're there partnering with some of the biggest companies around the world, securing all their endpoint data.
And for the layman like myself, when you say endpoint, what do you mean?
Yeah, endpoint. So these are your laptops and your desktops. If you think about your knowledge worker, they're constantly moving around today. They're working from anywhere, and they're taking data with them. And so having the ability to be able to protect that no matter where your employees are is really important for companies today.
Yeah. I own and operate a management consulting company, as you know, and if anything happened to our devices when we were on the road and we travel a lot, boy, business would really suffer. So I can imagine your product is in high demand right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's we all have had that pit in the feeling, the pit in your stomach feeling when you have a data loss event or you accidentally delete something or you get hit with ransomware. There's nothing more detrimental to our businesses because there's so much IP for companies that's sitting on these laptops and desktops.
It's depressing to know that we live in a world where the term ransomware exists.
It sure is, but it's ever present. Everybody's getting hit by it.
Yeah, no question.
It's a tough deal, but we can help people recover from that easily.
All right, so let's move on to our questions here. And again, just to remind everybody what the topic is. So today we're going to demonstrate how to learn who your buyers are, how they make purchase decisions, and why they're going to choose you over your competitors. So Ann, let me start with my first question here, which is kind of an introductory question, but I think it's a good way to get rolling this morning. So who are your buyers, and how did you discover this?
Well, let's just start with who our buyers are. We're in the world of dealing with those laptops and desktops, so our buyer is predominantly in IT. So most often we're selling to and working with IT administrators, IT managers and directors and VPs, those that handle the day-to-day management of these laptops and desktops in the organization. At times, depending on the strategic nature of the initiative or the problem that they're looking to go solve, it can roll up to the CIO. The other piece, again, we solve a number of different data security and protection issues. So oftentimes we will find ourselves, always starting primary buyers in the IT organization, but we'll bridge into an information security, especially with something like ransomware, or we bridge into the legal department. But again, the whole world, because we're dealing with software that needs to get implemented on these laptops and desktops, it's with IT. So that's who our buyers are. And how we discovered this was that we did it in phases, and I've been with the company for quite some time. So early on, it was through tribal knowledge, right? Talking to different folks within the company, then validating through your Salesforce automation platform that you might be using or a CRM system. But most importantly, finding out and how you discover who your buyers are through win-loss calls that the marketing organization would conduct. So it's a really key piece, especially that win-loss call, about making personal connections with those buyers and learning about them.
Yep. So the move from tribal knowledge to win-loss calls, that's an interesting move. And we deal with clients all the time that are still in the tribal knowledge stage, if you will. And of course, we advocate what you're doing, which is to get a little bit more systematic or programmatic at it. So what was the kind of, I guess, the trigger event that progressed you from this tribal knowledge approach to maybe a more formal approach like win-loss calls?
Frankly, it was making the time. I didn't have to do I had to do some internal education, talking with sales teams or talking with those that had the relationship with the buyer. But, first and foremost, it was, there's nothing more valuable than talking to your customers and prospects. And so first educating internally, saying, hey, win-loss calls, it's not about evaluating how good our salespeople are. It's about identifying those key drivers, key decision-making criteria, emotional components of why they chose the solution that they did. And it's just making the time. Those are win-loss calls. They're nothing to be afraid of. Customers, prospects, those folks are happy to give feedback because, you know what, it's very rare that a vendor will reach out to them and say, hey, I just want to talk to you about how we did.
Yeah.
In terms of, what's driving you. And so making that personal connection with a customer, a brand new customer, or maybe in the future they chose a different vendor, but maybe in the future they might be a customer. So continuing that relationship, it's a lot of fun, and it's not a scary thing, but you do need to make the time for it.
Yeah, I think that's key. I mean, we're all time-starved, but that's an important activity. So your advice is well taken. Make the time for it. Okay, let's go to my next question here. So what factors do your buyers consider before they buy your product and service, and then how did you become aware of these?
Well, from a factor standpoint of what our buyers are considering, there's kind of three that I'll call our table stakes, and that's really more about your solution and what you're providing. So in our world, security is first and foremost. They're looking at things. Can it be deployed in a way that meets our unique security requirements? Can it fit uniquely within, our infrastructure? Second, they say, well, how easy is this thing? Because the last thing, and this is an emotional component for the buyer too, is this going to double my workload, or is this going to make my life a lot easier? So how easy is it to deploy? How long will it take to deploy? How easy is it to manage? Because a lot of times our buyer is also a user from the IT administration standpoint. So you want to make sure that you're not creating more work for them. And that third table stakes piece that they look at is the performance of the product, right? How stable is it? Because again, it's running on the laptop and desktop. You want to make sure that it stays out of the way of the user, that it's not negatively impacting the performance of those machines that those knowledge workers are using. So they look at that performance and reliability of the product. What's more interesting and what I call your attention to are two key pieces from an influence or factors that they consider before they buy: people and support. Because at the end of the day, it's how good are you after they buy. Our buyers continually check the depth and the quality of our documentation. They'll run a free trial or a proof of concept, and then we actually pride ourselves on our customer support, or what we call customer champions, and we encourage them to conduct a support call. Do a test run with our support organization to see what that's like, because that's a really important component is after they've made the purchase, what's my life going to be like? And then secondarily is previous experience, and this is becoming more and more so. So have they used this product at a previous company, or peer recommendations, right? Who else in their network, their business network, has used the product before? That's a really important factor that time and time again when I do those win-loss calls, it's the advice of their peers.
Mm-hmm. That's just a fantastic answer. I mean, I love how you distinguish there between kind of table stakes, so security ease of use and performance and stability. And then you get more into kind of the emotional drivers, which are very often the key drivers, which are the quality of your people, your support, previous experience, and peer references. I love the term customer champions.
Thanks. We prided ourselves on branding that team, because really it's about customer success at the end of the day, and the teams that are available 24/7 to keep our customers up and running and happy, because again, it's some of the most important data of their organization that we have the honor and privilege to secure for them. So we want to make sure that they're well taken care of.
Okay, so next, let's move on to the buyer's journey. So I guess, what is your buyer's journey? And again, the follow-up question, I guess, is, since this is a teaching call today, how did you learn that?
Well, our buyer's journey, again, buyer journey being mapping the buyer and their decision-making process. And in our world of B2B software, again, we're predominantly selling to IT, and we've defined it as it consists of 4 key decision-making stages in that buyer journey. Number 1 is that awareness stage. So this is where they're trying to understand more about a business need or a problem that they're trying to go solve. And the driver for that can be something internal or external, like, for example, an internal would be they are establishing a new process, or there's a new strategic initiative, or something external would be new regulations that they're facing, or a change in the market. So they're aware and they realize that there's some business need or a challenge that they need to go solve. They're qualifying the fact that they've got this need and realize that a change needs to be made. I think what's really important when you're connecting with folks at this stage is that you want to make sure that they're questioning their status quo. In other words, create that sense of urgency of what they're doing today, or frankly, what they're not doing is not going to solve their problem. So that's the first phase. The second phase is research. So this is, again, that's that exploration phase. This is what are the ways that we could address the business need or the problem? This is about the best strategy to solve that challenge, find the best route. Do we do it internally? Do we build it? Or do we find an outside resource? So, for example, in this research phase, do we already have a vendor internally that provides this type of service? Or do we need to find a new partner? Is it worth addressing in the first place? So that's that research phase. The third phase that we see is that then they get into the evaluation phase. And this is where they've actually committed to a solution approach. They're identifying their short list of vendors. And this is where they really get in and start to really engage with our sales. They want to kick the tires. They want to explore how it's going to fit in their environment. And this is where we often see the proof of concept idea start in this stage. But then the outcome of that pushes you into the fourth phase, which is selection. So in our fourth phase, this is when they're doing the reference calls, completing and finalizing the ROI or the business case justifications, getting final approval, and then engaging with legal, procurement, IT, finance. What's kind of interesting is that in the industry, generally you hear about 3 phases of the buyer journey: education, consideration, and decision. But we've broken it down into 4. We see 4 phases. We see the decision phase as really 2 elements broken into 2 key pieces, where each stage, we've got unique information requirements, unique stakeholders. And in that 4th phase, that selection, where they're doing the ROI, the business case justification, that procurement can be a derailer. And so we really needed to break it into 4 different phases. So that's kind of how we look at the buyer journey from our standpoint.
That's fantastic. All right, we're going to take a quick break. During the break, think about the 3 questions I asked Ann. Do you know the answers? And more importantly, do you like the answers? If not, we can help you. Consider having one of our experts spend some time with you in a workshop. To get a feel for what is covered in the workshop, go to sbi.tips/2017 workbook and download a copy of the workbook that we use in these sessions, and turn to pages 234 to 237. That's where we talk about understanding your buyers. So this is the SBI Podcast. We'll be right back.
Meet Jerry. He's the CEO for a startup in Silicon Valley. He just signed up with SBI On Demand, a membership for growing businesses that includes an SBI workshop, access to subject matter experts, and a library of exclusive video tutorials. With SBI On Demand, he can access the very best of SBI from anywhere, even when he's on vacation. Just don't tell his wife. How do you SBI? Take it to the next level with SBI On Demand. Learn more at SBIOnDemand.com.
Welcome back. You are listening to the SBI Podcast. I'm your host, Greg Alexander, and today's guest is Ann Fellman, Senior Vice President of Marketing at Code 42. Today we are demonstrating how to learn who your buyers are, how they make purchase decisions, and why they will choose you over your competitors. So let's jump back into our questions. So Ann, previously in the previous segment, you described your buyer's journey to us, these 4 steps. Does the buyer's journey vary in length by variables such as the market segment or the persona you're selling to, the product you're selling, or maybe even the sales channel you're using? And if it does, how does it vary and why does it vary?
So your answer is absolutely. Buyer journeys do vary by persona, I think, and problem orientation, by market segment, by size of the company. A lot of folks believe that a buyer journey is very linear from left to right, but actually we see that buyer journeys are chaotic and unpredictable. And so what we do is really kind of defining, trying to make that journey, that process, a little bit less chaotic. So we start with the persona. We want to define the journey as to how personas come in and out. So we take the problem, and then we look at, okay, well, who are our buyer personas that are going to be involved in finding a solution to the problem? And so that's where what we've done is really simplify by taking the problem and then understanding who's going to be looking at that problem at different stages. We look at it from how they come in and out of that buyer journey process. So we look at it from these 2 angles to kind of smooth things out. I think the other key piece that we do is try to keep it simple in terms of focusing on just the key people in the journey. We're not targeting or messaging to ancillary departments like marketing and sales. We really try to stay focused on the primary buyers, and that'll simplify. They absolutely, vary by length. It really depends on the scope and the size of the problem that they're looking to go solve for. How broad is the solution going to impact the organization? And then size of company in terms of length of time. I mean, a company in what we call our mid-market segment is, 100 employees to 2,500. They can move a lot faster and make decisions a lot faster, where you're getting into the really large organizations. You've got big committees that are involved in that. That can take, anywhere from, I've seen journeys that start 2 years back, there's a gap, and then they kind of come back around. And so I see things sometimes even taking up to 18 months or longer. So it absolutely varies. But start out simple.
Yeah. Well, it's good advice. And, for the audience, this chaotic and unpredictable buyer's journey, that's the world that we live in. And as much as we like to have nice, neat little linear processes so we can measure things very clearly and report to the CEO and the board, tight numbers, it doesn't work that way. I mean, chaotic and unpredictable is an understatement, and that's the way it is. So make sure you're designing your process to be flexible enough to deal with that. Okay, next question here, which is an interesting one that we're seeing stump a lot of organizations. And how you answer this question has a big implication on the marketing and the sales team. So the question is a decision to buy your product made by a centralized buying decision team, or is it made by a decentralized, fragmented buying decision team? So what is it in your case, Ann?
Yes to both. So again, it varies on size. So let's just, again, trying to keep things simple. In our mid-market, it's a much smaller group. It's a handful of folks in the IT world that are making the decision. In a large enterprise, I'll call it's centralized but decentralized, so that's where that chaotic nature comes in, where you've got a large committee, but again, predominantly ruled by IT, but other groups such as information security, legal, procurement have a much stronger influence and are much more involved in the buying process. Again, they come in and out at varying stages throughout that process. So start by the size of company, and then kind of we go in from there. Another consideration, I mentioned this earlier, is just the strategic nature of the problem that they're solving. So again, that's where things can get, if the bigger the initiative, the more visibility from a C-level exec team perspective that have a say in this, the more decentralized it's going to be, the much larger committee that you're going to have to deal with and build consensus with. So that's kind of how our world operates. So, and again, another piece is the complexity of the product that you're selling.
Yeah.
So for a simple example would be office supplies, right? That's probably just procurement. That's probably a very straightforward buying process. In our world, for a software application that can be rolled out to the entire business, you've got a lot more people involved in that decision-making process, so it creates a lot of complexity, and you start to branch out into other areas. So, and then so there's the complexity piece, and the last piece is like, what's the maturity of the market segment that you're in? Are you a breakthrough product that's going to completely disrupt the market? Are you improving on what's there, or are you an established market where it's pretty straightforward? So those are different kind of elements that you want to be looking at as you map out your buyer journey. But I'd say, don't try to boil the ocean. Keep it simple the first time that you go through this, and look at by size of company or the nature of the problem that you're solving.
Yeah. And for the audience, think about the implication to what Ann just shared with us. So earlier she described her buyer's journey, 4 steps: awareness, research, evaluation, and selection. And now we've taken that buyer's journey and we've gone into different market segments that have different kind of behaviors, if you will. So in a large enterprise, it's going to be a larger buying decision team that may be decentralized. And in that environment, it's going to take longer. And one of the reasons why is that all of those members of that committee, if you will be at different stages of the buyer's journey. Not everybody goes sequentially at the same time through those 4 steps. So as a sales team, it's no longer just to say, where is this opportunity in the funnel? You have to say, where is the buyer, the individual buyer, and then do it by buyer on this buyer's journey. And you might have, procurement in step 4, and you may have IT in step 2, and you may have, the ultimate IT decision maker, the chief information officer in step 3. And what do you do in that situation? And you got to have a playbook that allows you to run plays there to ultimately get everybody through those 4 stages and to the conclusion that you want. So it's a big question to answer, and it's one that everybody who's listening in today should prioritize. Okay, next and final question on this segment, and then we'll take a quick break. So here I'm going to get to channels. So I guess my question is, through which channels do your customers prefer to engage with your company? And in the world that we live in today, where it seems like there's a new channel every day and everyone's going after this omni-channel experience, how did you learn about all these different channels?
Well, in our world, there's no single formula, and it does feel like for everybody, it's a moving target. So how we try to look at the channels in which customers prefer to engage with us, we look at our marketing strategies involving human and non-human engagement. And a lot has to do, again, what we just talked about, the size of the organization that you're selling to, the size of the deal, the complexity of the sale. From a human perspective, our customers and prospects still engage with us at trade shows and field events, user group meetings, various opportunities, because we still, at the end of the day, we're still marketing to people. And so having that human connection point is a really important component of how they engage with us. And from a non-human perspective, right, these are things like the website, the content downloads, the videos, and things like that. And so we make sure that we're measuring and tracking and looking at everything. So your marketing automation platform, integration with your Salesforce automation, that will really give you a good picture to discover how and when those buyers choose to engage with you. So that's kind of how we look at it and discover it. And then experiment. Don't be afraid to experiment too. So finding new channels, because they are human and they're unpredictable. And so it's always looking for new opportunities to connect as well.
It's a refreshing answer, and the reason why is because I think the world is over-rotated to the non-human engagement. And I guess the consequence of that is that we're all getting 300-400 emails a day, as just one example. Keeping up with social media as another non-human digital channel seems to be impossible. I mean, every time I log into my feeds, it's just endless and endless and endless. So in your environment, is it 2 parts human, 1 part non-human? Is it the inverse of that? What is the split there between human and non-human?
I would say it's probably 2 parts human, 1 part non-human. And again, it does depend on the size. So if you're selling, a quick hit, more transactional, you're going to be a lot more non-human interaction points. But we still, we're actually experimenting back to more human touch points, or going from an online, driving them to a human connection point. So we're actually going back and doing direct mail pieces that drive people to a site that then drive us to create an opportunity for human engagement. Yeah. So we're going back because, again, we all get thousands of emails every day. And so we're going to go back to the places where organizations have largely ignored to market and look at those as opportunities as well. So, but I would say it's probably a 2-to-1. Yeah. From our point of view.
Okay, fantastic. All right, let's take another break. Before you come back, head over to Apple's App Store and download the SBI app. Now, why would you want to do that? This allows you to get all of SBI's sales and marketing content like this show in a mobile-friendly way. Okay, one more segment with Ann after the break.
Meet Jake, the VP of Sales for a growing tech company and an avid runner. During his marathon training, he listens to SBI podcasts.
Dedicated to helping you make your number.
This way, he can stay in shape and stay on top of the emerging best practices in sales and marketing.
Your job as a sales ops team is to make the sales team more efficient.
Now that he's mastered the 8-minute mile, he's planning to make his number and take over the top sales spot in the tech world. So watch out, competition. Jake is right behind you.
Help the audience understand how you prioritize those accounts.
And he just got his second wind. How do you SBI? Podcast, video podcast, blog, TV, magazine. Access it all on the new SBI app, available now in iTunes.
Okay, welcome back. This is our last segment with Ann, demonstrating how to learn who your buyers are, how they make purchase decisions, and why these buyers will choose you over your competitors. In this segment, I hope to reward those that have stayed to the end of the show, God bless you, by discussing some advanced concepts. So here goes. So, Ann, earlier in the show, you talked about win-loss. So let me ask you kind of 2 related questions. So the first is, when you win a deal, what are the reasons? And when you lose a deal, what are the reasons?
Okay, so when we win a deal, why do we win a deal? Number one, the technology speaks for itself. So that's kind of, again, back to that table stakes comment. But really what puts us over the edge is that we've got fanatical customers in our customer council, and we have a very large customer advocacy community. And so they're out there evangelizing Code 42 to all of their peers. So the proof is in what your customers say about you. So again, that's a really important touch point is there's human interactions going on there, but it's our customers that are driving those human interactions. And there's nothing better than someone saying, I've had experience with the product, and this is the great experience that I have. So that's one reason why we win a deal. The other reason is just the success. It's rooted in our customer's journey. Again, it doesn't stop at the purchase. So I talked about the customer champions and dedicated customer success teams that are focused on helping customers, fully nurture that the investment that they're making. And we win because of our people. We've got fanatical service and support, and customers really see value in that. So I would say those are the reasons. Those are hard hard things to recreate or hard things for your competitors to reverse engineer. And so those are reasons why we win. When we lose, most often it's because the buyer chooses to stick with the status quo. They've got a limited budget and they decide to put that budget somewhere else, or they decide to kind of limp along with the solution that they have today. And then should things change, they'll re-engage with us. I've done some win-loss calls where they said, "Oh, we looked at you a year and a half ago, and then we kind of put a pause, and then we decided, oh, we have a much bigger initiative, which is we need to kind of reevaluate our entire endpoint security stack. And what you do, Code 42, protecting all the data, that was a core component of that." So that's usually when you lose a deal, or the deal just basically kind of stalls out, and then you'd be surprised that, kind of status quo, finally they decide to make a real change on the status quo. So those are, it's loss has to do with a change on the customer side, shift in priorities, shift in dollars, shift in people, right? Mm-hmm. So those are some of the reasons of when we do lose a deal, but when we win a deal as well.
I want to dig into this a little bit because one of the things that you've mentioned several times is peer references in prior experience. Sometimes when we look at the output of win-loss analysis for our clients, we see the basics like you didn't have this feature or you were too expensive. And those, in my opinion, are usually not the reasons why you win or why you lose. Those are kind of the logical reasons. But the reasons underneath that, getting to the why behind that, which are the emotional drivers. And, you discovered these, peer references as an example, how critically important this fanatical support is. I mean, you guys are a technology company, and yet you're differentiating based on the quality of your people, which is normally a tactic used by a service organization with the people or the product. But you guys have gone a different way here. So these, what I would call these real reasons for winning and losing. So you're conducting a win-loss call, and it sounds like you're really good at conducting the win-loss interview because you're able to surface the truth. And sometimes that doesn't come out. So what's the secret sauce there? I mean, how did you determine the real reasons for winning and losing?
Well, you need to be well thought out with the categories of questions that you're going to ask for win-loss. So a lot of tech companies, you're right, are very feature function oriented. And so I think a mistake that organizations might make when they conduct a win-loss call is simply just going through the feature function checklist. And we don't do that. We cover all kinds of things, all kinds of topical categories. Of course, we want to understand, the business drivers, what were the reasons that they decided that they had to go solve the problem that they did? What was that problem? We do dive into the product, product capabilities. But then we dive into, all the other kind of value add elements of, what it was like to engage with the team. Did they go through a support call? So really getting into more granular detail through that experience, not just a checkbox, because you can do a checkbox that's easy, but it's engaging in the conversation and really asking the why a couple different times, a couple different ways to get to kind of the meat of why they didn't choose, why they did or didn't choose your solution.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. All right. We're running a little bit short of time here, so I just have one more question for you. So if you were hired by a new company tomorrow with a mandate to do what we did today, which is learn who the buyers are, how they make purchase decisions, and why they will choose you over your competitors, what would you do, and in what order?
Okay, 3 core things. Number 1, find out if your organization is already systematically gathering the data about your buyers and who they are through what kind of information are you gathering through Salesforce automation. For example, when you win a deal or lose a deal, are there drop-down menus as to why? That's one element. Or if you're surveying your customers or your prospects on a regular basis, and if not, figure out what you need to do to get there. Secondarily, and kind of running right in parallel, get out of the office. Go connect with your customers. Go do those win-loss calls and customer visits. especially the new customers, especially those who haven't deployed yet. That's a perfect time because the buying process is really fresh in their mind. And those, and then lost calls. Don't be afraid to go do lost calls. They're so important. Learn where you fell flat. The lost calls, frankly, are the most valuable calls that you could possibly do. So go look for the lost calls. And just one last tip, remember at the end of the day, you're still marketing to a person or selling to a person. Obviously, you're going to get the business drivers, but learn about them as people. Some of the most fascinating things that I've learned about our buyers is when you ask them, what do you do when you're not at work? Our customers, for example, love craft brews. They love Star Trek or sci-fi, road cycling, organic tomato farming. You learn all kinds of things, and those are elements where you can connect with them emotionally and on the personal side, and gives you all kinds of creative ideas that you can really stand out with your marketing.
Yeah. Boy, that's really interesting. I've never heard of somebody doing a loss review in person. And just the thought of that is so exciting and innovative. I just think that's a great idea. I think the conversation will get to a level of depth when you do it in person than when you do it on the phone or even more coldly via a survey. So that's a great example.
Yeah, one little thing. I did a loss call, and they were talking about their evaluation criteria that they used. And I said, would you be willing to send that to me? And they sent me the complete spreadsheet of all the criteria and our scores, our competitor scores, and everything. I mean, there's huge value. You can always ask. The worst that they're going to say is no, but a lot of times they say yes.
All right. So, Ann, that was a great demonstration for our audience on how to learn everything you need to know about your buyers. So, on behalf of all the people that watch and listen and read our material, I want to thank you for sharing with our audience your approach on this very important topic.
Great. Thank you. It was a real pleasure to participate.
Great. All right. I want to thank you, the SBI audience, for tuning in. You have made us the most popular podcast in this category for 2016. And boy, we really appreciate your loyalty, and we hope to return, or give you a return, I should say, for that loyalty by having great topics and great guests like we did today with Ann. If you want to learn more about this topic or the other areas we focus on, go to salesbenchmarkindex.com/register and create an account. This will allow you to personalize your experience with our content. So for instance, you can choose the topics you are interested in and how often you want to learn about them. Okay, that's it for today. As always, until next time, I wish you good luck as you try and make your number.
This has been the SBI Podcast. For more information on SBI services, case studies, the SBI team and how we work, or to subscribe to our other offerings, please visit us at salesbenchmarkindex.com.